And joining me now is the Labour Party's candidate in Warminster Without, Anthony Tyler. Good morning.
Good morning.
Why should the people in Warminster Without choose you on the 4th of May?
Well, if they want somebody different, I'm different, and I'll explain why. First of all, I am a local, but I've only been a local for 3 years. And I see that as an advantage rather than a disadvantage, because I see it with a clear pair of eyes. I mean, most of my work in life has been troubleshooting, and so I've gone into different places to solve a problem. And this fresh pair of eyes, I think, I think it's an advantage rather than a disadvantage. So that's one reason. And the other reason is, if people are happy with what they've got, then I suggest that they vote for the status quo. If they're not, then give me a chance.
And I was speaking to Fleur de Philippe, who is the incumbent
Yes.
in that ward earlier, and it's the 13th safest Conservative seat in Wiltshire. So you've got a bit of a challenge, haven't you?
I've got one hell of a challenge, of course I have. But the fact is, if you don't try, then these people think, well, I don't have to try very hard themselves. For example, I had someone phone me email me only yesterday, and she was desperate, in a desperate situation because of money that she hadn't got that was due to her from in the form of benefits, to which she was entitled. Absolutely desperate, and I said, well, you must go to your, I've got limited clout because I'm not a Wiltshire councillor. I suggest that first of all, but let me know, because we've got other people that might be able to help you. You should go to your county councillor. And she said, well, am I allowed to do that? I said, that's what they're there for. That's what they're paid to do. And that's the sort of thing that I want to do. I get most pleasure out is solving people's problems.
You mentioned about people voting for you if they don't want the status quo.
Yes.
So what do you feel is wrong with the status quo?
Well, you might think it's an advantage having a overwhelming majority of Conservatives, but I consider it to be a disadvantage. And what's making making it worse is the fact that we've got a Conservative government. So really, they don't have to do much, do they? They're not going to get a rocket in. They're not going to have someone like me niggling at their heels and saying, look, this is wrong, you've got to do this, you've got to do that. I mean, if they wanted to change, they've got the power over their government. They really have, haven't they? Because we all know what happens when tourists play up to the Prime Minister, and she sort of bends a bit. She may not bend as much as we would bend, but she would bend a bit, and they're not doing their job. They're safe, they're comfortable, they're getting paid, they've voted themselves a pay rise. What more could they want?
So one of the big issues in the area, particularly I imagine in the more rural areas like Warminster Without, are the access to services. So do you feel that people in Warminster Without do have access to the services? I
think the services are rotten, and I really do. I mean, and I'm not saying when I first came down, I thought, what a state! It must be the worst county in the country for its roads, for its bus services. And people talk about potholes. Potholes is only part of it. You can't even see any white lines. If you're driving, as I often do, I go in the evening to Westbury or Warminster and come back on the B3092, is it? Anyway, the B road.
The B road, yes.
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, when it's dark, it's blooming dangerous. And when it's not dark, you've got thundering wagons going far too fast. Oh, they're not breaking any speed limits, but they shouldn't be going the speed that they're going. If I had my way, every road would be 10 miles an hour slower for starters. And the roads would be fixed, not just the potholes. I came on my way to this meeting. I drove over a pothole that had been filled, but it had been overfilled, and it was actually more dangerous than when it was a pothole. I mean, are they using amateurs to do it? Absolutely, I'm disgusted. But when you grow with something, you sort of accept it, and a lot of people are accepting, well, it's the economy, it's this, it's, you know, with no money and all this sort of business. Of course we've got money. It's how we spend it is that counts.
So there have been cuts to a number of services because Wiltshire Council's pot of money from the central government has been reduced.
Yes.
So does the council tax go up to fill the gap, or do other services need to be cut instead? Yeah,
so I mean, I expected you to say that, because I would have said that. Well, I think it's a hybrid, isn't it? I think if the council taxes had to go up, as long as they weren't excessive, if they were hammering on the door, after all it's their own party, hammering on the door of Westminster and saying, look, we want more money, and don't tell us one breath that we're the 5th richest country in the world, but we can't afford to fix your roads or fix your healthcare, then, you know, it's a poor thing. They have the opportunity to do something about it, but they're not. And as far as I'm concerned, if they can't do it, then let somebody else who can.
You mentioned healthcare there briefly.
Yes.
I imagine that your residents in Warminster Without access the doctor's surgeries here in Warminster, and at the moment we have Smallbrook Surgery is only open a couple of mornings a week. Do you see a solution to that?
Well, yes, it's got to change, hasn't it? I mean, you know, what I just can't come to grasps with, if you consider when we were bankrupt in 1945 with no money, and what we borrowed from the Americans and the Canadians was used to pay our overseas debts, we built the National Health Service and all the other things that we take for granted. And we had a much better service than we've got now. No, we didn't have the facilities we've got now, but it's no use, you know, having the facilities if you haven't got anybody to man them. And here we are, I think I'm right in saying, is it 25% less nurses are applying because they can't get bursaries now? Well, they've been cancelled. I mean, it's so short-sighted. And if you say, and I haven't mentioned housing because that's my big thing, we bought a way out in 1945 to 51. We bought a way out of austerity by building houses. We built 1.2 million houses in that 5.5-year period that Labour was in power. 1.2 million. And all right, that was exceptional. But give Harold Macmillan, a Tory, probably the last one with a bit of a conscience. He was building 300,000 houses a year and proud of it, and going on the television and saying, "This is my 300,000 of the year," and standing now. Oh no, because we're paying homage to people who want to see their houses go up in price, and to hell with their children or somebody else's children. Let them struggle.
So, where in Warminster Without should we build those houses?
I think they should be everywhere. Not a massive housing estate in one. No, I mean we made stakes in the 60s and 70s, but because times were desperate. Well, they're desperate now, and people did the easiest, what they thought was the best. But we don't want a multi-storey block of flats going up in Warminster, do we? Of course we don't. But if you look at every village, and they all built a few houses, and I hate this patronising thing about starter homes for people who haven't got much money. Why should they be patronised? Why should they have a starter home? Why shouldn't they have a decent home? It's the land prices that have got to be controlled, and that's the thing from central government, but that's the thing that has to be controlled. When you get a farmer who said to me, and he had a small holding many years ago, and council small holding, and he hadn't got enough land, so he bought 5 acres of land, and he bought it for about £25 an acre or something. And he says, "Do you know, Anthony," he says, "if I'd have thought that at the end of my farming career, I could get £25 an acre back. The money I spent, I would have thought, I've farmed that for free. He says, but I've just sold it for housing and I've got 2.5 million. Now that cannot be, he says, it's not right, but I'm not going to refuse the money. Well, who can blame him? But the fact is, it's wrong, isn't it? It shouldn't be allowed.
So if you're elected on the, I think counting is on the 5th of May, so if you're elected on the 4th of May, then what will you do? Because I mean, are you expecting a Conservative administration still?
Yes, of course.
So what would you as a Labour councillor be able to do?
Well, I'd do more than, well, we've only got 4 Labour councillors at the moment, but the more we've got, the more we can do. But the one thing, I don't care if I was the only Labour councillor on there, I'd be a pain in their backsides. They would, and it's worked for me in the past. I've been a councillor in the past in Staffordshire, and it's surprising what you can achieve by being a blooming nuisance. And of course the press, thank God there is the press, because they love a good story, and I've used it many times to support my argument, and I would say that 80 to 90% of the time I've got my own way, or got the people's way I'm acting for.
So we're running out of time, but the final question that I'm asking everybody is, if there was one thing, if you're elected, if there was one thing you could do, you could achieve in the next 4 years, what would it be?
Well, that's a good question, obviously. Well, I could say anything that comes along, and against all odds, and that would probably be the honest, probably the truest answer. But certainly we've got to do something about the roads and housing. But roads is a major. First of all, people drive too quickly. Secondly, I don't know what it is about the southwest, but everybody drives up everybody else's backside. It really is the worst area, and I've lived all over the country. It's the worst area for tailgating. Don't know why, but there it is. But you know, we want more police. I've never seen a policeman. I honestly, in 3 years, apart from flying by in a car now and again, I've never seen a policeman, because I'm interested in police and I'm interested in their uniforms and for the different forces. And I don't know what it is because I've never seen one. So that says it all, really.
Okay. Thank you very much for coming in. We've run out of time, but good luck on the 4th of May.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you.